So before you say it, yes, this list is really late, except it's still 2020, so technically no, I'm still good. Now, with that out of the way, oh my god, this list was so difficult, but it is my most requested video of all time because people have literally been wanting me to make this for 10 years now. I thought I'd be done by now. Clearly I'm not, though many think I am. I'm still here, so we must honor this request. And this one was so much harder to do. The last decade saw Transformers explode in the marketplace. Last time I did this, there was usually one main toy line and maybe a repaint or specialty line going, a couple masterpieces here or there. But this decade, kids' toys and collectors' toys split ways. Masterpiece became a regular toy line. A line for movie characters happened. So many sublines. So many specialty releases. Weird oddball Transformers from other companies. You could make an entire toy line out of just the MP-10 Convoy repaints. We probably saw over 1,000 Transformer toys in the last decade. Combine that with the roller coaster this decade was for sizes, prices, and build quality, and you have a very difficult task in naming just 10 as the best. Along with all that, I also wanted to make sure this list wasn't just the 10 best masterpiece toys of the decade, which it easily could be. So instead of just overall quality, I decided the best way to judge all Transformer toys fairly was bang for your buck. How much you got for how much you spent. As a nice little example, we have a toy like, say, Titan's Return Hot Rod and Masterpiece Hot Rod. In both cases, I think both toys are worth exactly what they asked for. They both have some flaws, but they are also both really nice figures. In the case of Masterpiece Hot Rod, you have this huge backpack, a lot of shell forming, and because of his big price point, that does weigh a lot more heavily than it would on, say, Titan's Return Hot Rod, who has a few issues, but nothing too glaring. Both gave me exactly what I expected. Their advantages and disadvantages kind of balance each other out. And that's what I'm talking about. What toys gave me the most bang for what I spent on them? On top of that criteria are my ground rules. Nothing third party, official or otherwise. Nothing released from a previous decade. New toys only. Toys designed to go together or packaged together as one set, I will count as a single entry. And of course, this is all just my opinion based on my personal experiences. I couldn't buy everything, and it's highly likely that we do not have the same tastes in toys. And again, the last 10 years was ridiculous, so if I just plain forgot a toy, don't hold it against me. This was a lot. But I think with all that out of the way, we are finally ready to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the top 10 Transformers of the decade 2, 2010 to 2020 edition. I think in any top 10 countdown, you kind of reserve the 10 spot for a personal favorite that is probably just a pet favorite. One that wouldn't normally be included on any official list, but hey, it's my list, I'm going to do whatever I want. And in this case, I am naming Titan's Return Topspin to my 10 best toys of the decade. For starters, there's no reason why this toy is as good as it is. The G1 toy it's based on is literally a one-step auto changer. It transforms itself by flipping its legs forward. That's it. That's all they had to do. Instead, they gave us this really clever and rich, fun transformation for a deluxe, a really cool reimagining of his vehicle mode, and a lot of playability because it is the Titan's Return line. You got a lot of little things you can do with that tiny little headmaster, the cockpit, the pegs, and all this. It was a really fun figure. To top that off, it just felt good. For the size class and the price point at the time, we're still kind of getting used to cheaper feeling figures, hollowed out feeling figures, smaller figures. He just felt really big and buff for the size class. He felt like he was worth more than what I expected. Again, bang for your buck. And he just plain looks really, really good. Now, the oddity to Topspin is that Twin Twist just isn't as good. It's a remold that does everything exactly the same. It should be just the same figure, same quality. It just doesn't work, and I don't know why. And I've asked other people, they have the exact same opinion. Twin Twist, for whatever reason, didn't come out as good as Topspin, even though they're exactly the same. It's a very odd thing, but it adds to Topspin's magic, and thus, even if it is just my personal opinion, I think he deserves mention at the bottom of the list. Here's the first entry where I cheat because we are talking about two toys that are meant to be one. They were sold individually. Yeah, they're individual characters, technically, but they used to be one character. This is Power of the Prime's Battletrap. And when I talk about this, we are actually talking about two Legends class figures, Battle Slash and Road Trap. Two completely new characters, but both fairly decent little figures for their size. They both pull off. It's a little bit jank individually, I will admit, but they pull off some very nice little individual figures. The magic comes when you combine them because they make a full-size, deluxe, fully realized Battletrap. A G1 toy that was generally pretty terrible. I mean, it was one of the Duocons. They were not great. But this was such a good reimagining. Again, above and beyond what it needed to be, and you got so much playability out of the two when you combine them. They were doing similar to the Energon gimmick, but way better than Energon did it, because everything involved was still really solid. And then the toy got even better when Siege came out, and we got Skytread, the other Duocon reimagined. Didn't have the same playability, but he had the same peg joint, which meant you could interchange the two, just like you could in G1. Small little detail, adds to the mystique, adds to the overall package. So a little bit retroactively the toy got better. But it was still a phenomenal figure, phenomenal set, and way more than Hasbro had to do. So, big credit to them. Here's another entry where we're going to talk about multiple toys, but these are at least packed together. At the very least, if you get the version we are going to talk about, they were packed together, and that's the caveat here. Only the American version of this figure counts for this list. That is Masterpiece Soundwave. Phenomenal upgrade of the original, wasn't it? He had this really cool look to him, had all the features of the original toy, the cassettes came out of the chest, he could do all these different things. But the coolest part about him was how good the cassettes came out. Some of them were so nice, and the best version, of course, it's Masterpiece. But the clever engineering, where their weapons were internally stored on Ravage, Laserbeak, and Buzzsaw. You didn't have to plug them on, they just popped out like they did in the G1 cartoon. Fantastic engineering to actually accomplish that. And the fact that you got all of this, and these just tons of accessories. This was a hugely loaded pack for one price point in the US. It was absolutely magnificent. Now, the reason I have to go with just the American version is because Takara decided Soundwave was going to be an individual release. He had one cassette, and then you had to buy 2 packs to get all the other cassettes. That was not going to fly. It just did, and it would not have flown here in the US. 1 box, 5 cassettes, tons of accessories, and a really cool Soundwave. The only reason it's not any higher on the list is mostly because of hindsight. Masterpieces after that have had more involved or interesting transformations. They've accomplished cartoon accuracy a little bit better. I feel like if Soundwave had come out a couple years later, he would have been even better than he already was. As it stands, fantastic upgrade of a legendary G1 character, and kind of proved that we will still buy cassette toys, even though kids today don't know what those are. If you are anything like me, you were really disappointed that Prime First Edition was a one-wave and done toy line. So many good molds. They're so much better than the Prime RID versions that came out later. And I don't think any of them show that better than Optimus Prime himself. First Edition Prime, especially if you got the first release that had all of his paint intact, was a phenomenal transformer. Such a clean and cool transformation, giving you such a nice show-accurate robot. And Transformers Prime, if you'd forgotten, had this like sleeked down, stylized movie aesthetic. It's kind of a cross between the G1 solid look and the movie kind of like sleek and angular styles. Both together, and it's kind of what the movie aesthetic should have been, just saying. But it was a phenomenal transformation to accomplish, given the restrictions, and given that it was one of the first toys out. Generally, there's kind of a period where the toys don't really measure up. They have to kind of work into it until they get to some really good ones. Nope, right out of the gate, absolutely legendary toy. Phenomenal figure all around, great articulation, great look, if he's fully painted, and just overall, such a good figure that the good figures we got out of Prime RID looked bad by comparison, because that's the one we had first, and we kind of wish we got to stick with it. But, you know, at least we got the one, and at least it came out really, really good. Before I reveal this one, we have to acknowledge something. The Combiner War toys were good. They were just too repetitive. Because when you have all these deluxes that all have to be arms and legs that are the exact same length in all of those modes, the elbows have to be in the exact same position in every single figure, you have to work around that big combiner block in the middle of them, you're going to have a lot of very similar toys, even if they didn't repaint and remold them to infinity and beyond. That said, the toys were good if you weren't sick of them. So I have to include something. And it's going to be one of the big gift pack sets. And if we're going to talk about that, I have to go with my boy Computron. Now, this one is a little bit interesting because I could mean the Hasbro version or the Takara version. On the Hasbro side, you had a cheaper price point, you had 2 extra figures that you didn't get with on Takara, and you had the dedicated hands and feet that looked so much better. On the Takara side, you had a lot more show-accurate remolding. The chest and the head of Computron were completely redone. You had certain figures done from better molds, but you are paying a higher price point, and you had import fees and all that to pay on top of it. And you had a red afterburner. At least Hasbro went with the original orange color, so there's a bit more variety. But the variety is why I picked Computron. Because look at all you got. You get a jet, a motorcycle, a super space jet. You get a fast, like sleek sports car, a drill tank. Which, by the way, Takara's version of Nosecone, such a good toy on his own. I could have put him on the list all by himself, because he's using a far better mold than the US version did. That said, between all their advantages and disadvantages, I honestly find both sets on par with each other. Pick your Computron with confidence, whichever one you can get a hold of, and enjoy. Both are absolutely fantastic sets with a ton of play value and a ton going on in both of them. It's just a matter of personal preference, or in some case, how much you're willing to spend, which one is better than the other. So pick your poison. Computron is all around good no matter what form he's in. Here's where we talk about bang for your buck again. And we're going back to Prime, but this time we are going to talk about the Prime RID line, the main line that came later, because after First Edition, I don't think anyone expected a better toy to come out of this smaller, cheaper toy line. And then the Vehicon happened. Of all the toys that could have gone so well, of all the characters that could have gotten just absolutely amazing figures to represent their cool heroics from the cartoon, It was the Vehicon that took everyone by surprise. It was so good. A shell former of a completely different nature. That car completely vanishes into a very sleek, slender robot mode that doesn't even look like it can transform unless you stare at it really hard and start finding dedicated parts for it. There's so much of that vehicle just vanishes from that toy. And it's one reason why it was so fun to troop build, because it's such a fun transformation and it's such a cool transformation trick. There were people who went absolutely nuts, because let's be honest, it is a drone character, but it's also a very cool design. You know, he had this very sleek mask, and black and purples, just like iconic Decepticon, and like it all worked. And then you had flying versions from Takara and like the white versions they released, and like there's just so much good going on this toy. I absolutely love this figure. A lot of people love this figure. This one took everyone by surprise. No one thought it would be better than the first edition Vehicon, and it ousted it. Easily ousted it. And is probably, I'm just gonna hazard this, the best toy in Transformers Prime, period. There, I said it. Start arguing with me in the comments, but you know I'm right. While I am purposefully kind of avoiding Masterpiece on this list, because let's be honest, a lot of Masterpieces could be on this list, I can't avoid them forever, and there are some that just absolutely deserve to be credited as much as possible. In this case, we're going to talk Masterpiece Sunstreaker. Now, when you talk a toy like Sunstreaker, you're getting to a character that doesn't have a lot of remold options in the first place until you get to Diaclone, which generally means I don't expect them to put a whole lot into the toy because they might only make money on one run of the figure. But oh my god. So, you've got a Sunstreaker who pulls off this like spot-on cartoon accurate look through crazy amounts of like panel forming and turning inside out. There's a whole tinier car top hidden inside his actual car top. It's an absolute amazing transformation. Bit of a big backpack, but that's a small point at this stage. It is such a cool, clever transformation. It's such a good rendition of Sunstreaker. And keep in mind, Sunstreaker was technically the original Transformer in Diaclone. He deserved a figure this good. Let's top that off with all the other things it has going on for it. Some nice accessories, some little silly accessories like the mask from Hoist Goes Hollywood. That's a really fun little inclusion. I love when they do things like that. You also had, how do I go any longer without talking about the vehicle mode, which has his toy-accurate version with all its turbo upgrades, and then all that kind of hides away and turns into just a stock Lamborghini without having to pull parts off and put them back on. That's absolutely incredible. And it still transforms. It still has a robot mode on top of all of that. That's hard enough for some toys to pull off just doing like the super mode of the vehicle. This one did a super vehicle mode, and then it did the robot mode, and it's just all around incredibly cool, incredibly clever toy. I cannot credit it enough. It absolutely deserves to be on the top 10. We're back to Power of the Primes, and no one was more surprised than me to realize that such a short toy line with such divisive opinions actually has another toy that is very much worth mentioning. Now, I think the biggest thing that toy line gave us was the evolution gimmick. The idea of a smaller, younger version of a character transforming and combining to create the larger, grown-up leader version of the character. And while Rodimus was good for what it was, and Primal was meh, we started off with a fantastic Optimus Prime. But we're not talking that one. I'm talking Nemesis Prime. So this one is a little bit odd. This was an Amazon exclusive, And it's your standard black Optimus Prime repaint. It's got the red translucent windshields and all that. But it's the extra miles it went to, and the things that color scheme did for that mold. The big thing I don't like in the Evolution Optimus Prime is how much gray is left over from his trailer combining into the big traditional Optimus Prime. He comes off a little bit cluttered looking as a result, inaccurate as a result. All black plastic means all of that looks absolutely fine. The vehicle mode and the robot mode deliver far better, far stronger looking presence than the original Optimus Prime one does. Kind of ironic there. Simplifying the colors, improve the colors. But you also have everything else that went into this. You have a brand new sculpted head, which gives him a much meaner look. I never like when just a straight Optimus Prime face is done for Nemesis Prime or Scourge. It never looks right. Completely new head here, works great. Even the little Orion packs, the Nemesis packs we got, that makes no sense whatsoever. He had a new head too. Absolutely changes it. And that vehicle, by the way, that little truck mode that has so many kibble issues, again, black plastic does wonders to hide that, at least at a first glance. And then you have just how good the gimmick works. You have the Dark Matrix and all this, but it's everything else you got. For an extra $5 on Amazon, you got extra guns which emulate the Armada Nemesis Prime dual arm cannons. You got a brand new sword accessory that emulates the original RID Scourge. And you even got Giza. You have this transforming bird that emulates his ARMS Micron partner. A lot of different Scourges / Nemesis Primes went into this version. It's kind of a love letter to all of them, and what I feel is an incredibly solid toy with a whole lot of things to do, and some really good engineering behind it all. Fantastic figure, and the fact you got so many upgrades for just $5 more, I think makes it just that much more amazing. It's a great package all around with a ton of things to do, and makes an already fantastic toy even better. It's been long enough. I think we have to finally discuss the big masterpiece in the room that has to be on a list like this, and that is MP10, Optimus Prime 2.0. This was, for a long time, the definitive masterpiece transformer. The Optimus Prime we wished we gotten from the start, with a fully working trailer, all of his accessories, and a more approachable toy in general. Lacking all the huge amounts of diecast of MP01, we got a much more hand-friendly version of Optimus Prime, with, in my opinion, a more fun transformation and more fun accessories to actually, play as Optimus Prime. The whole package was a wonderful upgrade of the original G1. Everything I wanted was included. Everything was there, just nice, solid, one box, everything Optimus. Perfect. It's absolutely everything you'd want in an Optimus Prime release. And in my opinion, still the definitive version of Optimus Prime. More so than Convoy 3.0 with its massive price point and overly complex transformation. I still feel like MP10 is more easily approached and a more fun toy in general. And really, you can't argue it. Look how many repaints it's had. Look at how many remolds, how many re-releases. Obviously, the toy is good if you can get away with using it that many times. Even for weird things like Ghostbuster repaint, because, I don't know. And besides that, it's one of those toys I don't hear complained about. The only time I ever hear complained about is someone saying his arms are a little long. If that's the best complaint you can levy against a toy, you know it's a really good toy. And to this day, I still feel like it should be the definitive masterpiece release, at least as far as Optimus Primes go. Now, before we get to number one, because there are so many toys that could have been on this list, I feel like I need to do a quick honorable mentions just to get in a few more and just let you know the ones that almost made it, and if this was like a top 20, we probably would have counted them too. These are just a whole bunch more toys that I absolutely loved. On the Masterpiece side of things, Shockwave, Optimus Primal, Inferno, and Starsaber all impressed me in various ways, but all of them came just a little bit short of actually making it to this list. I still love Generations Warpath, it's such a solid all-around figure, and Legends Blitzwing gave us the best version of my favorite Decepticon of them all. Reveal the Shield Jazz is still my favorite Jazz figure despite newer ones coming out, and it's going to be really hard to top with today's limited budgets. Titans Return Overload presented a really good upgrade to the original that was a very fun toy, and first edition Bulkhead was something of a magical piece of toy engineering, ballooning into a robot mode that shouldn't exist at that size. To credit a few clever repaints and remolds, we have Collectors Club Slipstream being a genius reuse of Prime First Edition Starscream, and Takara's Generations Ratbat being just an absolutely beautiful version of Senator Ratbat. I almost included Power of the Primes Predaking. I know a lot of people aren't happy with that mold, but I feel like it had a really good solution to the common scaling problem with the Predacons. It came with some sacrifice, but I think the end result was worth it because it still works really, really well. And to throw in a few movie toys, to be fair, Studio Series Grimlock was an absolutely amazing piece to make it to retail level with that crazy paint job. Battle Blades Optimus Prime gave us a small, affordable version of an already phenomenal figure, and Dark of the Moon Megatron turned out to be an incredibly cool and very well engineered toy that caught a lot of people off guard. With all that said, I think it is finally time, ladies and gentlemen. So what figure ranks better than even Masterpiece Optimus 2? Which one actually exalts itself to the highest level I could possibly give it? This is probably not going to be the one you expect, and it's probably not going to be your number one toy of the decade, but it's certainly mine, and I will explain why as I discuss Masterpiece Ironhide. I love this toy. I absolutely love this toy so much. This is again one where you can levy very few complaints. Oh, his sides are a little open. Oh, he's got little panels on his hips. Look at how good he looks. He is in this little butter zone between being way too accurate to the cartoons and not quite sure how to get accurate. He has this amazing level of panel forming and turning inside out that gets a very real-world accurate van, toy-accurate van even, into a very cool, very nice-looking G1 Ironhide with some really clever part usage and hiding away a lot of the vehicle mode bulk in a very cool way. It's a fun transformation and a very solid transformation. On top of how well engineered the whole thing is, you gotta think of the accessory count. This thing is loaded with accessories. You've got so many of the guns and accessories and tools that came out of Ironhide's wrists in the G1 cartoon. You've got all of his guns from his original G1 toy, including the rocket launcher, which is so cool. You've got an extra face even. He's got an extra face. I think he's one of the first Masterpiece toys to even do that. And all of it, there's so many accessories that they had to give you this little tray to hold everything, and it is an homage to his original battle platform from his original G1 toy. Such a good touch. So loaded. And this is where bang for your buck comes into play, because when this toy came out, he was $90. That's less than you pay for Bumblebee 2.0, who's like this big compared to like the big scale, like he's like the medium scale between Prime and the cars when he came out. Lots to do, lots of stuff, and such high quality at that price point. That was phenomenal. It's an absolutely unbeatable package in the Masterpiece line. And I think my love of it was cemented when I got Ratchet last Christmas, and I got reminded of just how solid that toy is. And I could put either one of them in this list. I could make either one my number one, but it's Ironhide because of necessity. Before this, the only thing we had for a cartoon accurate Ironhide, basically any Ironhide that wasn't scrawny G1 or overexpensive BotCon, was the Universe 2 toy, which is problematic, to put it mildly. At the very least, Ratchet got a good repaint out of that toy. He got a better head sculpt and better paint job on his head than Ironhide did, so that one's at least passable. Ironhide needed it so badly. Here's one of the original 86 Autobots, one of the standout Autobots who was in most every episode in the first season. And no good toy. Yeah, absolutely no good toy. Until this toy came along, and it's such a good figure. The retail level, we didn't even get that until Siege. That's how long he was waiting for a good figure, so thank you, Takara, for bringing about Masterpiece Ironhide, a much-needed toy for a very neglected, very beloved G1 character. And I am happy to say, my best toy of the entire decade. That said, I have absolutely no faith in this list because this was such a slog to figure out what 10 toys I would call the best, and it's absolutely impossible for me to be correct. Everyone is going to have a totally different top 10 than me, and I'd like to hear yours if you want to leave them in the comments below. Please let me know. Now, while there is plenty to talk about in the last 10 years as far as good Transformers go, good things in Transformers certainly, it wasn't all perfect. I mean, there's a lot that just wasn't good. A lot of it was pretty awful, now that I think about it. You know, and I'd like to get into that, but this video has gone on long enough, and I think you want someone else to tell you about that.